Thank you. Good evening. My name is Eric Underson. I'm the proud superintendent of the Pascack Valley Regional High School District, and it is my sincere pleasure to welcome you all to our kickoff event for Unity in the Valley. Unity in the Valley is a coalition of Pascack Valley community leaders, organizations, and educators who are committed to building tolerance and accepting diversity throughout the entire Pascack Valley regional community. I see we have represented here in front of us today, or in front of me, a variety of community organizations who embody the mission of Unity in the Valley. I'm going to ask that any service organizations, scouting groups, schools, religious congregations, law enforcement members, emergency responders, government officials, or any member of any associated organization that identifies with the mission of Unity in the Valley, I ask you to please stand and be recognized for your efforts in making our communities wonderful and accepting places. Before I wrap up, I would like to give a special thanks to the mayors of the Pascack Valley, the Pascack Valley Regional Clergy Council members, the Jewish Federation, and the Anti-Defamation League of New York and New Jersey for your advice, support, and collaborative efforts in making this event a reality. This evening, we will hear from a number of speakers and performers who will help us get a clearer impression of what it means to bring unity to the Valley. Beginning first with our national anthem performed jointly by the Pascack Valley and Pascack Hills choirs. Thank you.
Like the dawn's early light. Good evening, parents, students, and community members. We are Pascack Valley. We are one spirit.
We stand here tonight representing Pascack Valley's One Spirit Club. The mission of One Spirit is to educate the student body and ourselves about Native American history, culture, and current social issues. After all, we are the Indians. But what does it mean to be an Indian in America? We believe it is our duty to answer this question to honor the legacy and culture of those people who have been disregarded in our national consciousness.
The picture you see behind us is from our annual service trip that Pascack Valley students take to the Lakota reservations of South Dakota. The three of us were part of this immersive experience. In preparation for this trip, we spent the year beforehand understanding the historical context of the struggles that the Native people face in our country.
As a club, we stand for social justice. On the Pine Ridge Reservation in the rural Badlands of South Dakota, we visited 2 Native women who dedicate their lives to helping those in their community afflicted by poverty, racism, and the abject indifference of the mass American culture, who has in general systematically forgotten our Native roots. During an interview regarding sentiments towards Indian mascots, one woman told us, quote, "It's not honor. It's not respect. We have some kids that look white or they look black, and they're still Native. It hurts them. We are already born with 3 strikes. We can do better as the Pascack Valley Indians."
Injustice everywhere is a quote, "There's a threat to justice everywhere," is a quote by Martin Luther King. One Spirit proudly represents a group of students at Pascack Valley who are standing up to injustice. Come to a meeting and Skype with teenagers on the Pine Ridge Reservation. Follow our journey in South Dakota on social media. Support our alternate PV logo of a feather instead of a stereotyped Indian head.
We hope that our club will have a message that resonates within our school and greater, the Pascack Valley community. We are proud of the work we have done as a group and the support we have garnered from our administration. But our work is not done. It's just begun. Mitakuye Yasin is a Lakota word for "we are all related." We are striving for unity amongst our community to stand up to injustice. That's who we are, and that's who we stand for. We are Pascack Valley. We are one spirit. Mitakuye Yasin.
Our next speaker is Michael Gottheimer, Mayor of Montvale and President of the Pascack Valley Mayors Association. He has experience in business, entrepreneurship, and corporate executive management. Mayor Gottheimer initiated and has been a major advocate for creating this evening's event. Mayor Gottheimer.
Good evening. Before I start, I'd like to thank the committee that worked really hard on putting this event together from the 4 towns. They deserve a big thank you. From Montvale, Council President Elizabeth Glugler. And from Woodcliff Lake, the council member Nancy Gross. And from Rivervale, Council member Paul Criskillo. And from Hillsdale, Council member Tony DeRosa. And of course, our superintendent, today he received his doctorate, and we can call him for the first time Dr. Gunderson. So I never thought I would start a speech with the word hate, but here we are. Hate is it's a crime, it's an offense like murder, and arson, vandalism, with bias against race, color, religion, disability, sexual orientation, gender, and nationality. In the last 100 years, millions of people were killed as a result of hate crimes against humanity. Some of you sitting here today may know someone and may even have family members who were killed during these horrific events. I know that I do. My mother is Armenian and my father is Syrian. In 1915, 1.5 million Armenians were killed, and 600 Assyrians were killed because of their faith and their nationality. And between 1941 to 1945, 6 million Jewish people were killed because of their faith, and millions suffered. And as recent as the last few years, 500,000 Muslims and Christians were killed in Iraq and Syria because of their beliefs. In fact, in May of 2015, my cousin, who is exactly my age, we had the same milk from our mothers, was killed by terrorists, by ISIS, because of his religion. Same last name and same first name in Syria. These have symbols that are very hate symbols, and they bring pain to us. So we stand here today to declare that we will not stand for hate in any form and towards anyone. We have so many smart and talented students and children that can do wonders in this world to advance our society. They can cure cancer. They can conquer Mars. They can build bridges and highways and make our lives better. And I promise you, we are all here to cheer you on. We, as elected officials, parents, residents, fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, in one voice we say, hate in any form is not accepted here. It will not be tolerated. We all stand against hate. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone, and peace be unto you. It's a beautiful phrase that Muslims and Christians and Jews use. It's a beautiful blessing and greeting for all people. Peace be unto you. After the terrorism in New Zealand, now more than ever, Salam alaikum. Peace be unto you. Since we are in a school and part of a school community, let's begin by learning something together. In a moment, something will appear on your screen. There it is. You'll notice the Phoenician alphabet at the top. And that gave rise to the Hebrew alphabet beneath it. You can see the similarities in some of the letters. And if you look at the yellow, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, corresponds to these Phoenician letters, which look a lot like K, L, M, N, affecting our own alphabet today. And in fact, I don't know if I can point that far, but the purple letter all the way on the right, the Aleph, is followed by the Bet, because of course we read Hebrew right to left, giving us the English word alphabet. If you look at the first Phoenician letter, the purple one, it's kind of a fun party trick that if you turn it on its side, it's a capital A. Why am I playing with the letters? I'll get back to that. There's a message about unity, and more specifically about oneness. But before I highlight that message, I want to highlight the terms on either side, the ecumenical terms, because they bring in other faith traditions, not just my own of the Hebrew and the Bible, but the Sikh tradition, Ik Onkar on the right, and on this side, the Arabic word Tawhid, which also refers to oneness. Ik Onkar is really a combination of three symbols, the symbol and the word Ik meaning one, creator, creation, as if to say there is one ultimate reality for creator and creation. There is oneness, and Christians certainly know 3 in 1. So what do we really mean by the word oneness that we come to tonight? The word echad in blue in the Hebrew doesn't just mean, Hear, O Israel, Lord our God isn't two. It means that there is a quality of not being fragmented, a quality that doesn't allow for two-faced being, a quality of integrity and wholeness, something echad, yachid, umiyuchad, singular, precious, and special in God. And if the word God is not comfortable, if you don't believe in God, you can always add the extra O. Good. Good is not fragmented. It has integrity and wholeness. It is singular. It is precious. It is special. Now, in Hebrew, we have a numerology. You'll see that each letter has a number value, and the first letter, the purple letter, is 1. Everybody see that? So we have that is the same letter as the first letter, and then this letter is the blue here. So we have 1 plus 8, and this letter, 4. Anybody want to do the high math for me? 1 plus 8 plus 4 equals 13. Good. Now the letter below is, the word below rather, the red is ahava, love. Let's add it up. 1 plus 5 plus 2 plus 5. So in Hebrew, it's not just that God is love, it's that God equals love. And that's something to bring into this room tonight. You ready for a religious joke? What did the saint say to the hot dog vendor? Make me one with everything. Now, it's silly, but achdut, from the word echad, one, unity, is the dropping of certain boundaries. It means that we really are one with one another and with God. We find unity in that love. Ancient rabbis noticed something interesting about the story of Genesis as it appears in the Hebrew Bible. When God created the trees on day 3, all manner of flowering things came to be, and there were lush gardens. And when God created the stars, likewise, all the constellations, and fish and birds and land animals and insects, all came in their gaggles and herds and prides and swarms and packs and schools. But when human beings were created, there was just one. To show the oneness of humanity, to ensure that no person could ever legitimately say, my ancestors are better than yours. We are one. We are one human race, and racism and hate have no place among us. So let's set an intention tonight. We're going to hear diverse perspectives and backgrounds and faith traditions and languages. Already tonight, we've been to Lakota territories in Armenia and Syria. Listen for the ground of oneness on which we all stand. Tonight, let's celebrate Echad, the oneness. Muslims use two terms. Echad, just like the Hebrew, means unique, because there is a diversity among us. We each have our own unique way and identity. And they also use the term wahid. We share so much, we are part of the great whole. So please turn to a neighbor now and say, you are one unique and special person. Very good. And now please turn to someone else or the same person and tell them another message equally important. You are embraced by the one. You are embraced by the one. Take a deep breath and open your hands and open your heart. And let's set an intention for oneness. Let's practice it tonight. In here as we listen with open hearts and open minds, out there in the parking lot, as we scramble over at our exits. Oneness. You are one unique and special person, each and every one of you. And you are embraced by the one. Let's act like it.
Spellbound words, possession of the beggar and the king. Everybody, every day, you and I, we all can say words, regarded as a complicated tool, created by man, implicated by mankind. Words, obsession of the genius and the fool. Everybody, every day, everywhere and every way. Oh, words, find them, you can use them, say them, you can hear them, write them, you can read them, love them, feel them. Words transmitted as were fitted from the start, received by all, and we're sentenced to a life with words. Impression of the stupid and the smart. Everybody, every day, you and I, we all can say words. Inside your head can come alive as they're said, softly, loudly, modestly, and proudly. Words, expression by the living and the dead. Everybody, every day, everywhere, in every way. Oh, words, find them, you can use them, say them, you can hear them, write them, you can read them, love them, feel them.
Good evening. My name is Beck Kurdman.
And my name is Reese Ferrantino.
We're proud to represent the Pascack Hills Gay Straight Alliance and the values upheld by our student-initiated and student-run club. Members of the GSA are LGBTQ+ youth, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, and straight allies. And as such, we're faced with concerns and choices that most people don't have to think about. This is where the GSA becomes essential. Since 2008, our GSA has been working to create a school environment that is more inclusive, more accepting, and more open. The goal is to provide a space where these concerns can be heard and processed and acknowledged with support and with compassion.
We provide a sense of community, building social networks where students' identities are respected. Ultimately, LGBTQ+ teenagers are much more prone to isolation and social issues that all teenagers experience. And our goal always is to minimize this with our inclusivity efforts. Our GSA community often holds discussions of orientation, identity, and school climate. Club members initiate projects to promote more aware and welcoming environments, and this welcoming place is something we pride ourselves on. Students are always able to drop by, whether to share a personal experience or to plan our next advocacy effort.
Pascack Hills has always provided us with the freedom to advocate for ourselves, and these efforts wouldn't be possible without the space that we've been given. We benefit from the values of respect and acceptance that are taught in our regional middle schools and high schools, and the voices of unacceptance in those halls are drowned out by the students and faculty members who go out of their way to voice and lend their support to us.
There are always more efforts to be made, but our club has found a welcoming home at Hills, and that support is a first step towards fostering the communities we all strive for. Thank you.
The next speaker is Evan Bernstein, Regional Director for the New York, New Jersey chapter of the Anti-Defamation League. The Anti-Defamation League has been a valued partner of our school district. Mr. Bernstein sits on the New York City Public Advocates Hate Crime Task Force and the governor of New York's Interfaith Council. Mr. Bernstein.
Nice job. Thank you. Thank you to Superintendent Gunderson for having me. Thank you again to the Union Valley Committee. The word unity is something that has been used a lot in my office, but more recently with me in a very different context than I would have thought. About 7 days ago, I returned from Krakow, Poland, where I was there with an interfaith civil rights leader that I've become very close to, a gentleman named Pastor Gilman Rose, who's one of the leading anti-gun violence leaders in the New York, New Jersey area, and is actually the director of interfaith initiatives for Borough President in Brooklyn, Eric Adams. And we went together, just he and I, to visit Warsaw, to walk the ghetto walls, to experience the Poland Museum and learn of the history of how 3.5 million Jews were in Poland and how less than 300,000 were left just 6 years later, from 1939 to 1945. And then we got on a train together and we went to Krakow and saw the museums that are the synagogues that are the remnants of a once thriving Jewish community, and then took a car together to Auschwitz, and then took another car to Birkenau. And together, he and I, who came from southeastern Connecticut, as a white Jewish leader, and a Christian pastor who came from St. Thomas, in those moments, we found unity. We found unity in the sense of talking about our respective communities and the work that needed to be done to unify our communities. And we're using this trip as an opportunity to have those discussions and to ideally get more people together to come to Auschwitz-Birkenau, to have those conversations, to have one of the worst moments in history to be an opportunity to unite people of different color and different religion. But every night in Poland, the thing that the unity theme that kept coming out was what we were seeing in times of hate, when incidents happen. We see wonderful unity of macro, high-level leaders coming together. But we know what needs to happen is unity at the grassroots level. And that's why it's so important, as we're here in a school, that real unity doesn't just come from the highest levels. It's critical, it's important, it needs to be there. But what's equally as important is young people, parents, regular citizens coming together and finding those opportunities to unify one another. On this trip, as we were walking around Birkenau, and we just passed a pool of water that was about 50 yards wide, that still has ash in the pool from the Jews that were killed. We talked about what we needed to do when we got back. And it wasn't hold the story, it wasn't just continue to have conversations with our peer group. It was ensuring that we were going to make sure that unity, the theme of our trip, would come down to every level possible. So we have so many young people here, the young, amazing, courageous young people that just spoke before me. We need everybody to be committed to unity. And it can't just be one night at a school. It needs to be something that people understand is critical. And you can't think it's going to just happen because someone else is going to do it. Everyone has to take on their own personal action of trying to unify themselves with the other. Have those conversations. You'll be amazed. You'll have much more in common with the other than you ever thought. But if you don't have those conversations and you don't think that it's worth it, you're going to isolate yourself, and that's when hate happens. So my message is, try everything in your power on a daily basis to say, what did you do to unify yourself with someone different? What did you do to stand up for the other? Because if we all do that, even one little bit per day, the impact will be massive. So I hope everyone can learn. There's a myriad of amazing speakers today, especially the Attorney General. And I think it's important that we all think of this also internally ourselves as we move forward after this amazing event. So thank you so much for having me, and I really hope we can use this as a starting point, not an ending point. Thank you.
I want to start my remarks tonight with a simple question. What's your favorite recipe? Now, it's okay to take a few moments to think about it because it might not be the easiest question to answer. I'm not asking you to name your favorite thing to eat or what restaurant you like to go to. No, what I want to know is what's your favorite recipe? What dish or meal do you love to make? Or if you don't cook, what recipe does someone make for you that reminds you you're loved? Once you figure out an answer to that question, hold on to it, because we're going to use it in a few short minutes. Now, as a person of faith who didn't grow up with one, I'm fascinated by the stuff of religion. There's the big things like the rituals, the prayer books, music, and art. But there's also the little things, like what faith communities like to put up on their bulletin boards and what little booklets they keep by the front door that no one ever picks up. One of the things that I sometimes find in the lobbies of many different faith communities is that community's cookbook. They were usually published at least 10 years before. The pages are now yellowed, and the whole thing is bound together by an oddly colored piece of plastic. Now, in Christian communities, we usually make these as a kind of fundraiser, asking people to submit recipes they want to share with everyone else. And these cookbooks are always filled with recipes you can't find anywhere else. Sometimes you'll read about a chutney or a hummus that someone's mom used to make, but you'll also find things that are a tad frightening. Now, as a Lutheran Christian, those kinds of recipes usually involve a casserole dish, Jell-O, a fruit you've never heard of, and a can of tuna fish. When you read these cookbooks, you'll wonder if someone submitted something just to punk you. Yet you'll also discover something beautiful. You'll be invited to make that pineapple cake that someone always brings whenever there's a funeral. And you'll be able to taste the rice and beans someone prepares every time a church member is in the hospital, leaving it on that family's front porch with a note saying, "We're thinking of you." These cookbooks are more than just a collection of recipes. They're a collection of stories passed down from generation to generation, meant to be shared during incredible celebrations and to bring hope in moments of incredible sorrow. Our favorite recipes do more than tell others what we like to eat. They show our neighbors a bit of who we are, where we come from, and what makes us us. We all carry within us a cookbook of recipes that lets other people know the entirety of our story. But the cookbooks we carry are not, I think, meant to be only for ourselves. When we eat, we're meant to eat together. Many of our faith and cultural traditions are centered at the table, at the place where dishes are served and meals are shared. Because we are invited to do more than just eat, we are here to get to know each other. The recipes we share are an opportunity for us to be vulnerable, to share a part of our tradition, our history, and even our soul with one another. The table is where we get to be human, and that creates an opportunity for unity. But a unity that is honest with itself and with its past. The meal we share is how we discover each other's joys and struggles. But it's also a moment for confession, when we finally see how our way of life has negatively impacted another. It's there where we reflect on the fullness of our story and admit the ways we didn't take seriously the story of others. It's at the table when all our isms and phobias break down. Anti-Semitism, sexism, racism, Islamophobia, homophobia, and every other wall we build to deny people a place at our table is undone. When we take seriously what it means to really share a meal with your neighbor, we're no longer in a position to hate and harm each other. Instead, we're called to feed each other, to serve one another, and to help each other thrive. Now, that calling isn't always easy. Sharing a meal together will always take a risk. We need to be honest and to admit the ways we've hurt one another. Now, as a Christian, I have to name out loud the ways my faith has been used to hurt and harm other people. I have to acknowledge how we have wrongly denied people a place at our tables because of who they are, who they love, or where they come from. We haven't done enough to live into the reality of our faith tradition about a Jesus who kept getting in trouble for sharing recipes and meals with people he wasn't supposed to. But we can and we will change that. We're not here to deny someone a place at the table. Instead, we're here to eat and to be fully human together. So what's your favorite recipe? Who taught you it and why? Was it your grandmother's cookies, your brother's chili, your best friend's gluten-free mac and cheese, or that recipe you found online that you cooked all on your own for the very first time? I want you to turn to the person next to you and take a minute, exactly 1 minute, to share that recipe with them, why it's important to you, and how you're going to share your table with someone new.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Samantha.
And my name is Bianca, and we are co-presidents of the Human Rights League.
The Human Rights League of Pascack Valley is an organization whose purpose is to promote the respect, dignity, and freedom of all people, and to raise awareness of human rights issues in our school, surrounding community, and the world. We plan activities and events designed to educate, as well as fundraise for worthy causes and organizations.
The members of Human Rights League also hope to build a coalition of interested and like-minded organizations at PV, so that we can more effectively accomplish our goal of creating greater number of global citizens in our school and community. In making distant and abstract issues personal and immediate, we hope to encourage our classmates and community to pay attention to the world around us and to think globally and act locally, bringing PV into the global village.
As a club, we have bi-monthly meetings where we discuss not only the human rights-related issues in our school, but the issues going on nationally as well, ranging from DACA to immigration to the plight and treatment of refugees. We've attended March for Our Lives, student government meetings, board meetings, and always strive to make our voice heard. We have hosted a number of movie nights that screen human rights-related films and documentaries. We annually participate in the Zon to Rave Walk, which fights domestic abuse against women. But primarily, we educate and unite the PV community.
Years ago, we became infamous for publishing an opinion piece in our school newspaper that addressed the racism and bigotry going on in our school. It was a Human Rights League that ripped the Band-Aid off the wound and acknowledged what was happening. But unfortunately, that wound is still blistering. Hearing everything everyone is saying sounds wonderful, but unless we act to make a difference and do something about the unity in the school, nothing is going to change.
We understand that the work we do is hard and often unpopular. The Human Rights League is a small group that continues to work tirelessly and sadly, oftentimes singularly, without as much support from the school or community as we would like. Unfortunately, we cannot force members of the school community to participate in our events. We cannot force people to care. Despite this, we must continue to advocate and educate.
There's a lot of talk about how the younger grades are not passionate anymore, that they don't care. But that's not true. Yes, there are students with scary mindsets and terrible feelings towards certain groups of people, and we are working on that. But what about those that recognize the bad but don't say anything? Those that hate the way the racism is spreading throughout the school but have no idea how to handle it. We need to encourage students to be the somebody that makes a change. We need to let them know that they have the world in their hands and that they have the capability of making a difference.
Whether it be big or small, like starting a club or even speaking out to a group of people like this. We need to let the younger students know that they can make this world a better place if they just act. Not only the students, but parents, teachers, and the administration too. You are all doing a wonderful job, but there's so much more we can do, and it starts with educating and motivating kids to be proactive rather than reactive. We want them to acknowledge a problem and do something about it. Whether we like it or not, these students are our future. So if we don't spark the passion and drive to actually act upon these problems in our school, it's only going to affect us negatively later on.
We want to move beyond tolerance, but rather towards equality and respect. With that said, we would like to challenge everyone in the auditorium to make a personal goal to keep this conversation going in your classrooms, offices, lessons, and homes. We cannot continue brushing these issues under the rug or leaving them in the past.
Even though we may not see immediate change, we must continue fighting the good fight. Thank you. Our keynote speaker for tonight is Gurbeer Grewal, the Attorney General for the state of New Jersey. The former county prosecutor for Bergen County, Attorney General Grewal was appointed by Governor Phil Murphy in January 2018 and was formerly an Assistant United States Attorney for the District of New Jersey. We are honored to have him here with us tonight and welcome him to our Pascack Valley community, Attorney General Graywall.
Good evening, everyone. I am so honored to be with you tonight, and I'm so encouraged by what I see in front of me this evening. I see a room filled with law enforcement officers, public officials, faith leaders, parents, and students, especially students, who have come together tonight to stand up against anti-Semitism, to stand up against hate in any form, who have come together to show unity in the Valley, unity in the face of bias, unity in the face of hate. And that's what I'd like to speak with you about this evening. I'd like to talk to you about the hate that I've encountered in my own life, about the challenges that we face together now, and about how we can overcome them by uniting as a community, as a county, and as a state. As Samantha said, my name is Grabir Graywall. I was born and raised in New Jersey. I was twice sworn in as a federal prosecutor, first in Brooklyn, then in New Jersey. I was appointed by a Republican governor to be the Bergen County prosecutor. And about 14 months ago, I was appointed by a Democratic governor to be the 61st Attorney General of New Jersey. And just last year, I was invited to speak to a group of young professionals at the offices of a major corporation here in New Jersey. And on that day, my staff arrived before I did. And they were let into that office without any problem whatsoever. But when I got there, I was stopped at the security gate by a guard who told me that, quote, I wasn't on the list. And after some time had passed, and after I had explained to him that I was, in fact, the chief law enforcement officer for the state of New Jersey, was I eventually allowed in to give a speech, ironically, about diversity and inclusion. Now, I'd like to think that this was an isolated incident, and I wish I could say that this was the first time I had encountered something like this. But throughout my life, and regardless of the positions that I've held, I have faced indignities and humiliations. In supermarkets and restaurants and shopping malls, I have felt the eyes of others on me. I've had children come up to me and ask me for 3 wishes, while their parents stood by and did nothing. I have had children come up to me and ask me if I was Osama bin Laden, again, while their parents stood by and did nothing. Listen, I've been told to go back home so many times and in such impolite terms that it's hard for me to process what people are saying to me, but I know they don't mean go back to Bergen County. And sometimes I've endured these experiences alone. But unfortunately, other times I've experienced them as my 3 young daughters have watched. Now, some of this is obviously the result of ignorance, but some of this goes further than that. If you scroll through any of the online comments about me or the work of my office, it can really turn your stomach. I have been called at times a towelhead, a raghead, a terrorist. On the day that I was nominated to become Attorney General, one commenter wondered where I'd park my elephant. Others wondered what I'd be hiding in my turban. And unfortunately, since becoming Attorney General, threats have become part of life. Now, as a public official, I know better than to scroll down and read those comments. But I think there's something so instructive, so telling about what people say online. Because I think cloaked with anonymity, people often speak with impunity. And those comments provide us a window into what's going on right now in this country. And what's even more troubling, What's more troubling than those comments is that they are no longer confined to those dark corners of the internet. They are now being said in our public squares. I don't think any of us in this room ever imagined that we would see in our lifetimes hate-filled, torch-carrying protesters yelling, "Jews will not replace us," out of all places, a college campus. But it's not just limited to rhetoric. We have seen recent acts of vandalism across this county and across this state, where individuals have painted the walls of schools, of synagogues, and of homes with symbols and words that we thought had long disappeared from our lexicon and from our memories. And it happened right here in Pascack Valley. And it happened more than once. Multiple times last fall, school officials found swastikas in this building, including in the men's room. Swastikas, a grotesque symbol celebrating the murder of 6 million Jews and countless others in the Holocaust. And just 1 week after finding those spray-painted swastikas, officials found racist and homophobic slurs etched onto plaques on the baseball field. I know from tonight that this community is still reeling from these terrible discoveries, still processing them. But what makes all of this even more troubling is that we have seen how this type of hate can easily morph into physical violence. From tragic mass shootings at the 2 mosques in New Zealand last week, to the deadliest attack on Jews in American history at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, to the massacre at Mother Emanuel in Charleston in 2015, to countless attacks on synagogues, on mosques, and on houses of worship, to attacks on individuals because of what they look like, how they worship, or who they love. We have seen countless lives lost and families shattered by the twin threats of hate and gun violence. We have seen how comments can lead to conduct. And these threats are not abstract to all of us here this evening. Several years ago, we saw firsthand, right here in Bergen County, how words led to violence. 2 young men, Anthony Graziano and Akash Dalal, were living here in our community in Lodi. And at first, Graziano and Dalal began spray painting swastikas and anti-Semitic messages on synagogues. But within weeks, their behavior escalated, and they attempted to burn down synagogues using Molotov cocktails, even firebombing a synagogue in Rutherford, targeting the rabbi's bedroom where the rabbi, his wife, his children, his family slept. Now, thankfully, the rabbi and his family survived, and the 2 men responsible were arrested. And using our statutes against terrorism and bias crimes, when I was Bergen County prosecutor, we prosecuted those 2 men to the fullest extent of the law. They're now serving 35-year sentences. But here's the thing. They were 19 years old at the time of their crimes. These events in Bergen County and across the country serve as a stark reminder of how easily hateful language can be normalized and escalate into violence when we fail to resist it. But too many of our leaders fail to see these red flags and have ignored these warning signs. Too many of our leaders have accepted hate and anger and division as a normal part of our discourse. And I believe it is this acceptance that is contributing to the rise in bias crimes and hate crimes that we're seeing in New Jersey and nationwide. And this is directly impacting the public safety of our communities and the well-being of our communities. So the question naturally becomes, what do we do about it? Well, I think in part we push back. We must call out these hateful comments whenever we hear them, regardless of whether they come from our friends, our leaders, our parents, a family member, a teacher, or a classmate. That's the type of responsibility this moment requires of us. We must also hold accountable those who seek to harm others. As our state's chief law enforcement officer, I'm committed to using all the tools of our office to protect those in danger. We will bring to justice anyone who commits acts of violence against others, regardless of whether these acts are motivated by hatred of a particular race, religion, or ethnic group. Because we must treat an act of hate against any one of our communities as an act of hate against all of our communities. We must also push back when the federal government fails to protect all its residents, or when it pursues half-baked policies that do nothing to make us safer, but only divide us even further. And it's not just the federal government. We must also hold our local governments responsible and accountable when they use coded language or pass discriminatory laws. And we've done that at the Attorney General's office. But it can't be about pushing back alone. We also need to push forward, and that's what we're doing. We're pushing forward policies and programs to build a safer, a fairer, and a more just state for all of us. After the shootings in Pittsburgh, I not only condemned the attacker and his hateful ideology, but I also joined with Governor Murphy in calling for stronger laws to combat gun violence and gun trafficking. And we're also implementing policies to promote trust, transparency, and accountability between law enforcement and all our state's diverse communities. We're working with our state's Department of Education to develop an anti-bias program for middle and high school students. And through our Division on Civil Rights, under the leadership of our great director, Rachel Wainer-Apter, who's here this evening, we're expanding our efforts to enforce our anti-discrimination law, one of the strongest in the nation. And we're working hard to provide religious leaders with information and resources and training on how to protect and secure their houses of worship. Now, I could go on all night, but these are just a few examples of the many, many steps we're taking to help reclaim this moment. And I think what all of this should show you in this room is that while there are many challenges ahead of us, this moment also presents us with opportunities to do something about it, to protect our residents from anti-Semitism and hate and discrimination and even violence. We may face the sort of hate and bias that we had hoped disappeared ages ago, but we will continue to face it united. And that's why I'm so grateful that all of you are here this evening, because you are taking the first steps towards creating that united community we need in this moment. We need unity if we are going to defeat this rising tide of hate and intolerance. We need unity because each of us has an important and different role to play. Law enforcement. Law enforcement officers keep us safe, but they cannot solve the problems alone. Law enforcement must work with faith leaders and public officials and teachers and parents and students. Faith leaders who say that we must love our neighbors as ourselves, no matter what faith they practice. Public officials who say that everyone is welcome in our town, that everyone is welcome in our community. And parents and teachers who raise our young people to support our students, regardless of our differences, regardless of our race, our gender, our sexual orientation, or our religion. And students, like the ones we heard from tonight, who refuse to bully their peers for being different and who stand up for them instead. I'm reminded in this moment of words from Nelson Mandela, who said that no one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love, for love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. I thank you for being here tonight as you begin the work of building the kind of community we need. Let us all create a community where no one hates another person because of his race, sexual orientation, or religion. Let us all, united, create a community where we learn to love and not to hate. Thank you.
sincere thank you to Attorney General Graywall for that important truth-telling. There is one great modern philosopher, Cornel West, who begins most of his lectures by sharing this. He says, "I am who I am because somebody loved me." Each of us are the recipients of somebody's love. Someone attended to each of us, formed us with their attention. As the feminist Simone Weil has written, attention is the rarest form of generosity. Unfortunately, when attention is directed to hate speech and symbols, that also forms us. We live in a world where local attention is global attention. So any white supremacist act of violence across the world, like the one we just witnessed in New Zealand, that reverberates here. And any hate symbol at a local level is a global issue. Any attention white supremacists draw to form us has an impact, all the greater when that attention is magnified because of good people's silence. So today, having gathered together, we reclaim that attention. We reform ourselves in compassion, in service. We rededicate ourselves to taking risks, to being the first one to shout against ringing silence, to stay curious and self-reflective rather than self-righteous. We will immerse ourselves into the love that formed us, commit our many hearts and bodies by attending to that love which overpowers hate. There are systemic needs. Calling our representatives, working alongside the vulnerable, marching together for each other's causes, intersectional education. We're going to start today with ideology, with attention. We're going to start with remembering that we are who we are because somebody loved us. I'm going to invite you to close your eyes for just 30 seconds and think on a time that someone loved you well. A time someone stood up for you, took a risk for you, made you feel special or shared compassion. It could be a friend sitting with you for the first time, a teacher who notices your potential and compliments you, a stranger who looked you in the eye and smiled, a recipe someone shared. For me, it is my mother encouraging me every time an older white man said, "No, go away, little girl." Every time she said, "No, you get in there and try again." Now, open your eyes. And on the back of your program is a Post-it note. Take a moment and write down that act of love that formed you, that taught you what love looks like. And once you have written that down, write underneath it, "I will go and do likewise." So we're writing and giving attention to that memory of love that formed us. And underneath that, writing, "I will go and do likewise." When we leave this auditorium, there are poster boards with representations of hate spreading. We are going collectively to go out there together and overpower those. We are going to overpower those currently lone representations with attention to these loving acts that formed us, and a commitment to go and do likewise. Love is going to have the last word here tonight. and we will together embody, we will physically train ourselves to cover that hate over with love. So I'm going to invite us in a final gesture to rise in body or in spirit as we are able. With your Post-it notes in hand, and we will engage in a final sending before we leave our words of love. May the spirit that drove us out to gather together this night bear witness and bless you. May we demonstrate our love in attention and in action. May we always remember our responsibility to one another. Go now and share the courage and freedom of living in love. Amen.